Far north of Gondor's white towers, and far from the noisy roads of men, there is a forest where moonlight rarely touches the ground. A forest of roots older than kingdoms, of rivers moving silently beneath hanging moss, of hidden halls carved beneath hillsides, glowing with lantern light. And deep within those woods lives Legolas Greenleaf. Not yet the legendary traveler of later songs, not yet the companion of kings, only a quiet guardian of the Woodland Realm. So, if you enjoy these slow journeys into the calmer corners of Middle-earth, feel free to like the video, perhaps leave a comment telling me where you're listening from tonight. Now settle into your blankets, lower the lanterns, and let us drift softly into the deep green silence of Mirkwood. The forest never truly sleeps. Even in the quietest hours before dawn, northern Mirkwood murmurs softly to itself. Leaves whisper against one another, high above unseen paths. Cold streams slide through stone beneath curtains of moss. Somewhere far off, an owl calls once through the darkness before silence folds gently around the sound again. The Woodland Realm rests hidden beneath the trees. Like the white cities of men, the halls of the elven king are not built to dominate the land. They are woven quietly into it. Stone chambers carved beneath green hills, wooden bridges arching above black waters. Hundreds of lanterns glowing softly beneath branches thick enough to swallow moonlight whole. And moving silently through those halls before sunrise is Legolas. His footsteps barely sound against the stone. Like many elves, he rises long before the forest brightens. Though perhaps rises is not the proper word. Elves sleep differently from mortal folk, lighter, stranger. Their rest drifts somewhere between waking thought and dreams carried upon memory. Legolas has spent centuries beneath these trees, long enough to recognize the voice of nearly every stream, long enough to know where deer cross the riverlands during winter, long enough to sense when something in the forest feels wrong. And lately, Mirkwood often feels wrong. A faint sickness lingers beneath the older roots. Spiders grow larger in the southern reaches. Travelers vanish too easily along forgotten paths. Even the birds sing less freely than they once did. Yet the Woodland Realm endures. That is the duty of its guardians. Tonight's patrol begins before the eastern sky has fully softened. Several elves wait near the outer bridges, wrapped in dark green cloaks. No loud greetings are exchanged. Among elves who have traveled together for many years, silence rarely feels uncomfortable. One ranger checks the feathers on his arrows. Another tightens leather straps around his wrists. A third watches pale mist drifting above the river below. Legolas joins them quietly. A faint silver lantern glows nearby, reflecting gently across polished bowwood. The captain of the patrol nods once. The southern paths. Legolas inclines his head. No further explanation needed. The southern paths always require watching. Soon the patrol moves outward beneath the trees. The forest swallows them almost immediately. Mirkwood is not like ordinary woods. The trees here rise impossibly tall, their branches nodding together far overhead until daylight itself struggles to enter. Roots twist across narrow trails like sleeping serpents. The air smells of pine resin, wet bark, and deep earth untouched by sunlight. In some places, the forest feels beautiful enough to belong inside songs. In others, it feels ancient beyond comfort. Legolas walks near the front of the company. is hearing Kitch's small things others might miss entirely. Water dripping somewhere far away, the flutter of hidden wings, the distant movement of animals through fern and brush. Elves learn the language of forests slowly across centuries. Not spoken language, something quieter, a listening. The patrol crosses a narrow wooden bridge hanging above dark water. Below, the forest river moves silently southward through black reflections. In warmer seasons, traders sometimes travel these waters carrying wine, cloth, and carved goods toward distant settlements. But fewer boats come now. Fear spreads quickly through dangerous forests. By early morning, thin rain begins drifting through the canopy overhead. Droplets gather along Legolas's cloak but never seem to trouble him. The elves continue without complaint. Rain belongs to forests. So does silence. At last, the company pauses beside a ruined watch platform, half consumed by moss. Long ago, the Woodland Realm maintained many such outposts throughout northern Mirkwood. Some still stand, others have slowly surrendered back to the trees. Legolas kneels beside the remains of an old fire pit, ash disturbed recently. Tracks nearby. Not elven, a traveler perhaps, or something else. The captain studies the signs quietly, 2 days old. Legolas nods. No immediate danger. Still, caution remains necessary. The deeper one travels into Mirkwood, the more carefully one learns to move. Hours pass beneath drifting rain. The patrol speaks only occasionally. Unlike mortal soldiers, elves do not hurry simply to escape silence. Centuries teach patience. Sometimes entire hours pass with nothing but birdsong and soft footsteps between companions. And strangely enough, such quiet feels peaceful rather than lonely. Near midday, the rain finally eases. Pale shafts of sunlight slip briefly through the canopy. Dust and mist glow gold between the ancient trunks. For a few precious moments, Mirkwood almost resembles the great green forest it once was, before shadow slowly crept into its southern reaches. Legolas pauses near an enormous oak whose roots rise from the earth like old walls. His hand brushes lightly against the bark. Elves remember trees differently than men do, not merely as wood or shelter, but as living things carrying memory through ages. This oak was already ancient when the kingdoms of men beside the Anduin were still young. It has witnessed winters no mortal mind could properly count. Storms, wars, the slow changing of the world itself. A soft breeze moves through the branches overhead. The leaves answer with a faint silver rustling sound. Legolas closes his eyes briefly. Listening, not for enemies, for the forest itself, because part of guarding the Woodland Realm means remembering what still survives within it, not only watching for danger, but protecting beauty. The patrol eventually reaches a high ridge overlooking the darker southern woods. Here, the atmosphere changes subtly. The air grows colder, the silence heavier. Even sunlight seems weaker. Far away, between the trees, enormous webs glisten faintly, like pale wounds stretched across the forest. No one speaks for several moments. The spiders rarely traveled this far north. Still, their presence is always felt, a reminder that Mirkwood carries shadows older than most immortal kingdoms. Legolas rests one hand lightly upon the bow across his back, not afraid, simply ready. The patrol remains on the ridge until evening approaches, watching, listening, the slow work of guardianship. Not glorious, not heroic, mostly patience beneath ancient trees. As twilight finally deepens across the forest, silver lanterns are lit among the company, soft lights glowing gently beneath dark branches. One by one, stars begin appearing high above the canopy, wherever gaps in the leaves allow the heavens through. And somewhere beyond the endless woods, the hidden halls of the Woodland Realm wait warmly beneath their lanterns. But for now, Legolas remains upon the ridge beneath the deepening night. Quiet, watchful, a guardian of the forest while the stars turn slowly above Mirkwood. Night settles differently beneath the trees of Mirkwood. Open lands, darkness often arrives gently. Across fields, across rivers, across distant hills fading beneath twilight. But here, beneath the forest canopy, night gathers layer by layer until the world feels wrapped inside deep green shadow. The patrol remains upon the ridge while the lanterns sway softly in the evening breeze. Far below, the southern woods stretch endlessly into darkness. Even the stars appear fewer here. Only scattered fragments of silver, visible through narrow gaps in the branches high above. One of the younger elves settles near the roots of a pine tree and quietly unwraps a small bundle of travel bread and dried berries. The others eat little. Elves require less food than mortal travelers, especially during calm patrols. Still, the rhythm of sharing simple meals beside lantern light remains comforting. Legolas accepts several berries from another ranger. Their sweetness tastes faintly of summer gardens far away from these darker woods. For a little while, no one speaks. The forest itself provides enough sound. Leaves stirring, water dripping somewhere unseen. The distant call of night birds moving between branches. Then, from far off in the south, comes another sound, very faint, a harsh clicking noise carried briefly upon the wind. The elves immediately still, every movement quiet, every face turned toward the darkness. Again, the sound comes. Then, silence. The captain slowly lowers his lantern hood until only the faintest glow remains. No fear spreads among the patrol, only alertness. They have heard such sounds before. Spiders hunting far from their nests. After several long moments, the forest settles once more. No further movement follows. Still, sleep will remain lighter tonight. The patrol eventually withdraws from the ridge and descends toward a narrow hidden camp known only to the rangers of the Woodland Realm. The path winds between enormous roots and moss-covered stones, glowing pale beneath moonlight. Legolas walks silently near the rear now. His eyes drift occasionally upward toward the stars. Though much of Mirkwood darkened over the centuries, the heavens above remain unchanged, cold, clear, patient. The hidden camp rests beside a quiet stream, where smooth stones circle a shallow fire pit. Small wooden platforms, built high among the trees, allow the elves to sleep safely above the forest floor when needed. Tonight, however, the danger feels distant enough for rest beside the ground. A tiny smokeless fire is lit, barely more than glowing embers. Elves prefer subtle light within the deep woods. Too much one more sound fee will be the best tomorrow. 4 APs is head. Legolas settles beside the stream, while another ranger softly tunes a small harp carried carefully through many journeys. The music that follows barely rises above a whisper, slow notes drifting through the darkness like falling leaves. No marching songs, no loud celebrations, only something quiet enough to belong to the forest itself. The younger elves gradually relax. One removes damp gloves to dry beside the embers. Another leans back against a fallen log with eyes half closed. The long patience of woodland patrols often creates strange moments of peace. Hours spent simply existing among trees, listening, watching, breathing with the rhythm of the forest. Legolas gazes toward the moving stream. Moonlight reflects silver across the water. For a moment, memory drifts through him. Not sharp memory. Elven memory moves differently. Long centuries, layered gently together like overlapping songs. He remembers standing beside this same stream many years ago, beneath autumn leaves bright as gold. Back then, the forest had felt lighter, birds more plentiful, the southern darkness farther away. Some things fade so slowly they are difficult to notice until many years have already passed. One older ranger begins speaking softly beside the fire. Not a formal tale, merely remembering. He speaks of earlier winters when wolves wandered farther north through frozen valleys, of hidden feasts beneath the halls of the Elven King, where lanterns glowed red and gold against polished stone, of music drifting across underground rivers, while snow fills silently beyond the gates. The younger elves listen quietly. Even among immortal folk, memory carries comfort, especially during uncertain years. At some point after midnight, the harp music fades. The fire burns lower. Most of the patrol enters light elven rest. Stillness settles across the hidden camp. Only Legolas remains fully awake. Not from unease, simply wakefulness. He rises and walks a short distance from the others. The forest floor feels soft beneath layers of moss and fallen needles. Ahead, the stream widens into a still black pool, reflecting fragments of starlight through the branches above. Legolas kneels beside the water. The reflection trembles gently with the current. In moments like these, Mirkwood almost seems untouched by shadow. Ancient, beautiful, still alive. A breeze passes softly through the trees. Somewhere overhead, leaves shimmer faint silver beneath moonlight. Legolas listens. Far away, he can sense the deeper unrest sleeping within the southern forest. But here, for now, the night remains calm. And perhaps that is enough. Guardianship is often misunderstood in songs. Songs speak of battles, of victories, of shining weapons. But most guarding is quieter than that. It is long nights beneath cold branches, listening for dangers that may never come, preserving small pockets of peace while the wider world slowly changes beyond the trees. Legolas remains beside the pool a long while, watching stars reflected in dark water, watching faint mist drift above the stream. The forest breathes softly around him, and somewhere far beneath the roots of Mirkwood, old darkness continues stirring in forgotten places. Yet above it all, untouched and distant, the stars continue their endless turning over the Woodland Realm. At last, Legolas returns quietly toward the sleeping camp. The lanterns glow faint gold among the trees. The harp rests silent beside cooling embers. One ranger murmurs softly in dreams, filled perhaps with older forests and brighter centuries. Legolas settles once more beside the fire. His eyes rise briefly toward the small patch of stars visible overhead. Then gradually, even the guardians of Mirkwood drift into stillness beneath the ancient trees. And the forest watches through the long, slow hours before dawn. Let us drift deeper now, farther beneath the great forest canopy, where fewer travelers dare to wander, and where Legolas spends long, quiet years guarding paths forgotten by most of Middle-earth. Dawn arrives slowly beneath Mirkwood. Unlike open lands, where sunrise floods the world with gold, the forest receives morning only in fragments. Thin shafts of pale light slipping between tangled branches, silver mist glowing softly above streams. Small patches of brightness wandering across moss-covered roots. The hidden camp stirs gently. One by one, the elves rise from their quiet resting places among the trees. No hurried movement, no loud voices. Everything remains calm beneath the slow breathing of the forest. Legolas stands beside the stream, washing cool water across his hands. The air carries the scent of wet earth and pine. Somewhere nearby, unseen birds begin singing cautiously to the morning. Even their songs sound softer here. The captain studies the southern woods while fastening his cloak. "We move east today," he says quietly. Several elves nod. Again, little more needs saying. The patrol soon disappears once more beneath the ancient trees. The deeper regions of northern Mirkwood feel older than ordinary forests. Here the trunks grow wider. Roots rise from the ground like the foundations of forgotten towers. In some places, the canopy hangs so thick overhead that daylight fades almost entirely, even during morning hours. Yet the elves move easily through it. They know hidden paths, invisible to outsiders. Faint trails marked only by subtle carvings upon bark or the careful arrangement of stones beside streams. Legolas walks ahead now, bow resting lightly across his shoulder. His eyes drift constantly through the trees, not nervous, aware. Every guardian of the Woodland Realm learns awareness slowly across centuries. The movement of shadows, the silence of birds, the sudden absence of wind. Forests speak through small changes. By midday, the patrol reaches a region where old ruins sleep beneath the roots. Broken columns lean among fern and ivy. Cracked stairways descend nowhere. Half-buried walls disappear beneath moss thick as velvet. Long before the Woodland Realm existed, other peoples once walked these woods. Most are forgotten now. The forest remembers more than songs do. One younger elf pauses beside a weathered stone face carved into the remains of an archway. Time has nearly erased its features. Only faint eyes remain visible beneath drifting moss. "Who built this place?" he asks softly. The captain glances toward the ruins. No one remembers clearly, and somehow that answer feels fitting beneath these ancient trees. Because Mirkwood carries countless forgotten things. Old roads, old sorrows, old names lost beneath centuries of leafall. Legolas kneels near the edge of the ruins. Tiny white flowers grow between cracked stones, despite the heavy shade. Delicate, fragile. Still surviving, he brushes one lightly with his fingertips before rising again. The patrol continues eastward. Hours pass beneath deep green silence. Eventually, the forest begins changing once more. The air grows colder, the undergrowth thinner. Spiderwebs appear occasionally between branches high above the trails, small at first, then larger. The younger elves instinctively lower their voices. Even the birds seem quieter here. Legolas studies one enormous web stretched across dead branches beside the path. Morning dew clings to the silk like scattered silver beads, beautiful in a strange, unsettling way. Yet, beneath that beauty lies hunger. Mirkwood often feels like that now. Beauty carrying shadow beneath it. The patrol slows. One ranger signals silently toward disturbed earth nearby. Tracks, not fresh, but large enough to belong to creatures no ordinary traveler would wish to encounter. The captain studies them only briefly before motioning onward. This far south, caution matters more than curiosity. Late afternoon, pale fog begins drifting low between the trees. The world softens around the patrol. Trunks fade into gray distance. Lantern light glows faint gold through the mist. Legolas always finds these hours strangely peaceful. The forest becomes quieter inside fog, almost dreamlike. The patrol finally stops near an ancient stone staircase leading upward along a rocky hill. Most of the structure beyond has collapsed long ago. Still, portions remain standing above the forest, like fragments of some forgotten watchtower. The captain decides they will rest here until morning. The upper platform offers clear sight lines through the surrounding woods, a useful place for keeping watch. The elves climb the worn steps silently. At the summit, broken walls circle a small, open courtyard exposed to the evening sky. For the first time all day, the canopy fully opens overhead. The stars have not yet appeared, but the fading heavens glow pale blue above the ruins. Legolas pauses there for several moments. Open sky always feels different after long hours beneath thick branches, larger, colder, more distant. A tiny fire is lit within a ring of old stones. The smoke rises straight upward into the evening air. One elf begins quietly sharpening arrowheads while another unwraps dried fruit and travel bread. Nearby, Legolas sits upon the broken edge of the ancient wall, looking east. Far beyond the forest, hidden from sight, lie mountains and rivers and kingdoms of men. Yet here, atop the ruins, the wider world feels impossibly far away. The slow life of a woodland guardian often unfolds like this, not dramatic adventures, mostly seasons passing beneath trees, autumn leaves drifting across forgotten paths, winter snow gathering silently upon branches, spring rain feeding streams older than memory. And through all those years, the guardians remain, watching, listening, protecting. At last, darkness deepens fully across Mirkwood. The stars emerge one by one above the ruined courtyard. So many more visible here beyond the canopy. Silver rivers scattered across endless black. One younger ranger quietly names several constellations in the old elven tongue. Another adds stories attached to them. Ancient mariners sailing western seas, lost kingdoms beneath stars now forgotten by mortal lands. Legolas listens quietly. The stars always awaken old memory among elves. They have watched these same heavens through centuries mortal minds could scarcely imagine. Empires of men rise and vanish in what sometimes feels like a passing season. Yet the stars remain unchanged, cold companions above an ever-changing world. The fire burns low while the forest darkens around the ruined tower. Fog drifts silently below the hill, and high above the sleeping woods of Mirkwood, the stars shine with ancient stillness over Legolas and the quiet guardians of the Woodland Realm. The night wind moves softly through the broken ruins, cold enough now to carry the scent of approaching winter from the distant northern hills. The fire within the old courtyard has nearly burned down to embers. Orange light flickers faintly across worn stones carved long ago by hands no longer remembered. Most of the patrol rests quietly around the ruins. Some sit with backs against ancient walls, eyes closed in light elven sleep. Others remain awake only half-consciously, drifting somewhere between memory and dream. Above them, the stars shine brilliantly over Mirkwood. Without the heavy canopy overhead, the sky feels endless. A vast silver ocean stretching beyond the dark forests of Middle-earth. Legolas remains seated upon the ruined wall. He often prefers the final hours before midnight. The forest grows calmest then. Even the restless creatures of the southern woods seem to pause briefly beneath the weight of darkness. Far below the hill, pale fog drifts slowly through the trees, like silent river water. Lantern light glows dim gold beside the sleeping patrol. And for a little while, the world feels suspended between ages. The younger elf from earlier quietly approaches carrying 2 small cups carved from polished wood. Warm berry tea steams faintly into the cold air. Legolas accepts one with a soft nod. Neither speaks immediately. Among elves, silence often carries meaning all its own. The younger ranger eventually gazes upward. Do you think the forest remembers what it once was? Legolas watches the stars for several moments before answering. Yes, only that. Yet, the younger elf seems to understand. Because Mirkwood was not always called Mirkwood. Long ago, it had another name. Greenwood the Great. A vast, living forest filled with light. And though shadow slowly spread through its southern reaches over many years, pieces of that older forest still survive. Quiet clearings untouched by darkness. Streams still singing beneath moss-covered stones. Golden leaves falling peacefully each autumn. The forest remembers. Even wounded things remember. The younger ranger wraps his cloak tighter against the wind. My father used to speak of brighter days, he says softly. Before the spiders spread north, Legolas nods. He remembers those years too. Not perfectly. Even elven memory softens across centuries, but enough remains. Summer feasts beneath glowing lanterns, songs echoing through the halls of the Elven King, while wine flowed beside underground rivers. Open paths where deer wandered safely through the southern woods, a forest less burdened by fear. The younger ranger lowers his voice further. Do you think those days will return? Again, silence settles for a while. The fire crackles softly nearby. Wind brushes through distant branches. At last, Legolas speaks. Forests heal slowly. Not hope, not despair, simply truth. A younger elf studies the stars thoughtfully after that. No more questions come. The long patience of the Woodland Realm teaches acceptance of unfinished answers. Hours pass gently atop the ruined hill. At some point after midnight, thin clouds drift across portions of the sky. The stars dim and brighten behind them like distant lanterns seen through mist. Legolas rises and walks slowly along the edge of the ruins. Lo, the sleeping forest stretches endlessly into darkness. From this height, he can hear faint sounds carried upward through the trees, water moving over stone, branches creaking. Somewhere very far south, something harsher, a clicking sound. Then silence again. The spiders remain distant tonight. Still, their presence lingers like old poison beneath the roots of the forest. Legolas rests one hand against the cold stone wall beside him. This tower too has endured centuries beneath these woods. Storms, wars, long winters. Now only fragments remain, yet even ruins continue serving purpose. Shelter for wandering guardians, a watch point above dark pass. A quiet place beneath the stars. That thought feels strangely comforting. Not everything must remain whole forever to still matter. Near the fire, one older elf begins humming softly in his sleep, an ancient melody, slow and distant as flowing water. Legolas recognizes it immediately, a song older than the Woodland Realm itself, older perhaps than many mortal kingdoms now buried beneath grass and stone. The melody drifts gently through the ruined courtyard while clouds continue passing overhead, and for a brief moment, the night feels impossibly ancient, as though the forest itself listens. Eventually, Legolas returns to the fire. The embers glow faint red now, warmth fading. One by one, clouds begin clearing once more. The stars return in full brilliance above the ruins, silver, sharp, still. Legolas leans back against the broken wall and closes his eyes briefly. Not sleeping, listening. The long life of an elf guardian is shaped by such moments. Quiet nights, cold winds moving through forgotten places, watching over a world slowly changing around ancient forests. No songs will remember most of these nights. No great tales will speak of silent patrols or lonely watchfires beneath ruined towers. Yet perhaps these small moments matter most, because peace survives through countless unnoticed acts of care. A guarded path, a hidden lantern, a patient watch beneath winter stars. Far away beyond Mirkwood, kingdoms of men continue their restless struggles. Roads fill with travelers. Wars gather slowly beyond distant mountains. But here atop the ruins, the forest breathes in deep, slow silence. Beneath the heavens, and Legolas remains where he has stood for centuries, watching, listening, enduring. At last, the eastern horizon begins softening toward gray. Dawn approaches once more. Mist gathers thick among the lower woods. The stars slowly begin fading, one by one, above the forest. Not gone, only hidden by returning light. Legolas watches until the final star disappears, then quietly begins preparing for another day beneath the trees of the Woodland Realm, another long watch within the ancient forest. Let us wander onward now, beyond the ruined hill, and deeper into the long, quiet years of Legolas's watch beneath the ancient trees. Morning mist clings low across the forest floor. The patrol descends from the old ruins in near silence, while pale light slowly filters through the upper canopy. Every branch glistens with dew. Spider silk, stretched between distant trunks, catches the dawn in thin silver threads. The air feels colder today. Winter moves steadily closer through northern Mirkwood. Legolas walks at the front of the company once more. His cloak drifts softly behind him as the patrol follows narrow hidden paths winding between roots thick as walls. The forest smells different in colder months, sharper. The rich scent of pine and damp earth mingles now with frost, fallen leaves, and the faint mineral smell of distant snow. For long stretches, no one speaks. The elves know these woods too well to disturb their silence unnecessarily. A squirrel darts briefly across a fallen log. Somewhere high overhead, ravens circle beyond sight. And always, the forest continues murmuring quietly around them. By midday, the patrol reaches one of the hidden crossings along the forest river. A slender bridge woven from pale wood arches above black moving water. Its ropes are wrapped in living vines, so carefully tended they appear almost grown rather than built. Legolas pauses at the center of the bridge. Lo, the river slides silently south through dark reflections. Leaves drift slowly upon the current. A woodland realm depends upon these waters. They carry messages, food, wine, travelers, and sometimes sorrow. Legolas remembers years when boats arrived bearing wounded elves from southern patrols, others carrying news of vanished travelers lost within darker regions of the forest. Mirkwood has always demanded vigilance. The patrol eventually leaves the river behind and enters a quieter northern region where the trees begin thinning slightly. Sunlight reaches the forest floor more freely here. Golden grasses sway between birch trunks, white as bone. The younger elves visibly relax. Even the air feels lighter. One ranger kneels briefly beside a patch of tiny blue flowers growing beneath the roots of an ash tree. He smiles faintly. These survived the frost. Another replies softly, "They always do." Legolas watches the flowers, while a cool breeze stirs through the clearing. Small things endure quietly in Middle-earth. That thought comforts him. The patrol rests there for a short while, beneath open sky. Travel bread is shared, clear water drawn from nearby springs. One younger elf quietly carves delicate leaf patterns into a piece of pale wood using a small silver knife. Even during patrols, elves often create things, songs, carvings, poetry remembered across centuries. Perhaps because long lives naturally gather beauty wherever they can. Legolas sits against the trunk of a birch tree, listening to distant wind moving through the higher branches. The sunlight touching the clearing reminds him faintly of older forests farther west, forests untouched by shadow. For a brief moment, memory drifts again. Golden autumns beneath brighter leaves, feasts beside underground rivers. His father seated beneath lantern light within the great halls of the Woodland Realm. Music echoing through carved stone chambers while winter storms whispered harmlessly beyond the gates. Memory among elves rarely arrives sharply. It flows gently through the mind, like water returning to old riverbeds. One of the patrol captains eventually rises. We continue before dusk. The others nod quietly. Soon the company moves onward once more. By evening, they reach the northern borders of the Woodland Realm, where the forest opens toward rolling hills beneath vast skies. Here watchposts stand hidden among the trees, overlooking distant roads traveled occasionally by dwarves, wandering men, or traders moving cautiously between kingdoms. A small wooden platform rests high among enormous pines, overlooking the western trail. The patrol climbs carefully upward, using narrow ladders woven into the trunks. From above, the view stretches far beyond the forest. Blue hills fading into evening, Finn rivers gleaming silver beneath the setting sun, cloud shadows drifting slowly across distant grasslands. Legolas always enjoys these northern watchposts. The air feels freer here, less burdened by the deeper shadows haunting southern Mirkwood. A cool wind passes through the platform, carrying the scent of cedar and frost. Below, the forest canopy sways like dark green waves beneath the fading light. The patrol settles into another long watch. Lanterns remain hooded. Voices low, the younger elves take turns scanning distant roads through the twilight. Legolas rests one arm along the smooth wooden railing while watching evening gather over the land. Far away, tiny lights flicker briefly along a western road. Travelers, perhaps, or merchants seeking shelter before nightfall. The sight feels strangely comforting, proof that life continues beyond the forest. Kingdoms endure, roads remain traveled. Small fires still burn against gathering darkness. The stars emerge slowly above the northern hills, brighter here, beyond the heavier canopy. One by one, they appear across the deepening heavens, until the sky over Mirkwood glitters with cold silver light. The patrol grows quieter still. One elf softly hums an old traveling song beneath his breath. Another wraps a dark blanket tighter around his shoulders against the rising cold. Legolas gazes upward. He has watched these stars for centuries, watched them above winter forests, above rivers frozen beneath moonlight, above ancient halls glowing softly beneath the trees. The stars witnessed Greenwood before shadow touched it. They will likely witness whatever comes after as well. Yet somehow, that thought no longer feels sorrowful, only steady. The long years have taught Legolas something quiet about endurance. Not all beauty remains unchanged. Some survives through patience instead, through guardians who continue watching even when forests darken, through songs remembered beside fading fires, through lanterns still glowing beneath ancient branches. The night deepens further around a watchpost. Wind sighs softly through the pines. Far below, unseen rivers continue flowing through the sleeping forest. And high above the Woodland Realm, the stars burn silently over Legolas and the endless trees of Mirkwood. The final hours before dawn are often the quietest in Mirkwood. Even the wind seems to soften. The great forest settles into deep stillness beneath the stars, while pale frost gathers silently across the upper branches. High within the northern watchpost, the patrol keeps its long, patient vigil. Lantern light glows dim gold between the dark pine trunks. The younger elves sit wrapped in heavy cloaks while cold air drifts steadily across the platform. No one complains. Winter has always belonged to these woods. Legolas remains awake beside the railing, overlooking the sleeping forest. Far below, Mirkwood stretches endlessly through darkness and silver mist, ancient, boundless, full of hidden things. The stars above the Woodland Realm burn brighter now. Without clouds, the heavens seem impossibly deep. Countless lights scattered across blackness older than memory. Legolas has watched those stars through centuries beyond mortal understanding. He watched them during calm summers when Greenwood still carried more light than shadow. Watched them during harsh winters when snow buried forgotten paths beneath the trees. Watched them while distant kingdoms of men rose and faded beyond the forest borders. And always the stars endured, steady companions above an ever-changing world. A younger ranger nearby finally drifts fully into sleep beneath his blanket. His breathing softens. One hand still rests loosely upon the hilt of a knife out of long habit. Legolas glances toward him briefly. There is something strangely gentle about watching others rest during dangerous times. Perhaps because sleep itself becomes an act of trust. Trust that someone remains awake, Trust that the night will pass safely. The long life of a guardian is built upon such quiet responsibilities, not glory, not recognition, only patient watchfulness beneath dark skies. Far below the watchpost, movement briefly catches Legolas's attention. A deer emerges silently from the forest edge. Moonlight touches its pale coat while it drinks from a narrow stream winding through the hills. For several moments, the animal remains perfectly still, then vanishes once more among the trees. The forest continues living despite everything. That thought comforts him deeply. Even wounded lands still carry life within them. The hours drift slowly onward. One of the older elves quietly pours warm tea from a silver flask into small wooden cups. Steam curls upward into the freezing air. The scent of mountain herbs and berries spreads softly across the platform. Legolas accepts a cup with a faint nod. The warmth settles pleasantly against cold hands. Below them, the forest whispers endlessly to itself. Branches creaking, distant water moving over stone, the occasional rustle of unseen creatures beneath frost-covered undergrowth. No songs speak much about nights like these. The old tales prefer battles, heroes, ancient kings. Yet most of Legolas's life within the Woodland Realm unfolds through smaller moments, quiet patrols beneath lantern light, listening to rain against hidden halls, watching snowfall gather upon cedar branches, sharing silence with companions who have walked the same forest paths for centuries. Perhaps that is why the Woodland Realm feels so enduring, not because it is untouched by sorrow, but because beauty continues surviving quietly within it. At some point after midnight, soft snow finally begins falling from the northern sky. Only a few flakes at first, then more. They drift gently through the pines without sound. The stars blur faintly behind the snowfall, while the forest below grows pale and dreamlike. One younger elf wakes briefly and smiles sleepily toward the snow, before wrapping himself deeper into blankets. Legolas watches the flakes gather along the railing. Winter has fully arrived now. Soon the hidden halls beneath the Woodland Realm will glow warmly with lantern feasts, fires reflected in underground rivers, music echoing through stone chambers, while storms move quietly through the forest above. Even during dark years, the elves still celebrate winter, perhaps especially during dark years, because joy preserved carefully becomes its own kind of resistance. The snowfall deepens slightly. Mirkwood softens beneath white silence. The roads, the streams, the distant ruins hidden among roots and moss. Everything wrapped gently beneath winter's hush. Legolas closes his eyes briefly and listens. Somewhere far beneath the snow-covered branches, the forest still breathes, still alive, still remembering. He thinks then of how many ages these woods have already survived. Wars, darkness, the passing of kings, and yet every spring, leaves still return, streams still sing beneath thawing ice, birdsong still rises with the dawn. The world changes. Life continues quietly onward. At last, the eastern horizon begins softening beyond the distant hills. Very faint at first, a pale silver glow behind the endless trees. Dawn approaching once more. The stars slowly begin fading overhead. One by one, they disappear into the growing light. The younger elves gradually wake around the platform. Blankets folded, lanterns dimmed. Quiet preparations for another day's patrol beneath the forest canopy. Legolas remains by the railing a little longer, watching the final stars vanish above Mirkwood. Snow continues drifting softly through the pines. The forest below gleams pale beneath dawn, beautiful still, even now, especially now. Because perhaps the truest duty of a guardian is not merely defending a place. It is remembering why that place is worth protecting. The hidden rivers, the lantern-lit halls, the quiet songs beneath winter branches, the stars shining above ancient trees. Legolas finally turns from the horizon as morning light spreads slowly across the Woodland Realm. Another patrol awaits, another long, peaceful watch beneath the forest canopy. And somewhere high above the waking woods of Mirkwood, unseen now beyond the brightening sky, the stars still linger patiently over Middle-earth.